Hello, welcome back to Next Level Human. I'm your host, Paula Davis, and today we're diving into a pivotal moment in disclosure. It's the rise of none other than Jake Barber. And we're going to also talk about the real power behind psionics, and that is the practical application of the higher faculties of the mind. And this episode is going to give you a bit of a different perspective from what you will be hearing in mainstream disclosure. So let's get into it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the face of disclosure. Who is Jake Barber? So, Jake Barber is emerging as the face of disclosure. He has all the markings of a Hollywood movie star. He's rugged, he's handsome, he's a military hero, and he's also a brilliant businessman. He literally, and this is what this episode is called, consciousness is currency. And he's bringing that to light in a big way through disclosure. And in all honesty, it's a little bit Rambo-esque in terms of his character. And also, he did mention this, he did feel that he and his team's life felt a little bit threatened, felt like they were in a bit of danger. That's why he went to Congress in the first place. He said, hey, I'm disclosing to you, I've been working with this exotic non-human intelligence material and whoever the people are behind it that are hiring me to, retrieve these items, I'm feeling a little bit funny about my safety right now. So he is a perfect face for disclosure all the way around. And of course, a lot of us, including me, we are celebrating this emergence. But I'm also here to offer a little bit of a different perspective, one that invites you to step beyond what is being fed to you and use your personal higher faculties of your mind to see a bigger picture. Now, who am I? Why this matters. So, in 2012, my life was completely transformed through a spiritually transformative experience that sent me on a journey of deep study, investigation, and personal development. It led to the cultivation of my own personal psionic abilities, the practice of mediumship, and of course, the direct telepathic messages from non-human intelligence that I experience, especially from the inner earth realms. And in 2022, any inner earth beings shared with me a massive disclosure event would be soon be imminent. Okay, so I was meditating on my sofa one afternoon in June, and literally a voice spoke to me and said, hey, guess what? The beginning of disclosure has occurred with a congressional hearing in May of 2022. And they said that this is going to be exploding in the next few years. And they urged me to write a book, and they told me to do it quickly. And within 60 days, it was written. The material in my book really is not that groundbreaking in itself. In fact, a lot of other people have written this same material talking about how very important technologies have been suppressed by these legacy programs and kept us from moving forward as a species. But what's really unique about my material, which differs from other people's materials, is how it connects the dots as to what's happening today. And now the last pieces of this puzzle have come together with disclosure, additional congressional hearings in November, but more than anything, the disclosure by Jake Barber in January of 2025 with his interview with Ross Coulthart. And in truth, I see clearly where the forces are trying to, why there were forces trying to suppress my work. In truth, my book does offer a higher perspective on past and present events, educating people to see through the illusion. And this higher perspective is strictly due to my study of a lot of material over the last 10 years. Now let's return to Jake Barber and the technology behind his work, psionics. What is psionics? Psionics is still dismissed as pseudoscience, yet scientists are denied funding to study it. The people that are actually interested in it and think there's something there, they're not given any funding to study it. So it's difficult for them to discover what they want to find out about it. But why is this happening? It's because true psionics is the practical application of the higher faculties of the mind. And in truth, this is something that's been known for centuries. This is being utilized all the time, and we just really aren't addressing it, acknowledging it as we should. And the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, does offer consciousness development courses. But this knowledge has always been accessible. It flows like an endless fountain. In the 1850s, psionic abilities were widely accepted as mediumship flourished through the spiritualist church. There were literally 9 million members when it first became open. There were seances in the White House. It was emerging as being of an upper middle class study and spiritualist movement. And it was also during this time, and this is no accident, that as these principles, and today they call them occultism. And occultism has a real negative connotation to it. Psionics, I guess, is a better word. And then, mediumship is a better word, but then that became dirty. Psychic used to be a better word, but then they turned that into a dirty word. But really, it's occultism. And it's the study of the laws of the universe. It's the study of your being. It's the understanding that you are a spirit in a body and that you have abilities beyond your even realization. So during the 1850s, huge innovations occurred, all very much, very, very quickly. And the steam engine, of course, the iron, electricity, the vehicles, the 1850s on up into the early 1900s. It's amazing what we were able to develop in such a short period of time. And it was because a lot of these innovators were using these psionic techniques. And as they cultivated their minds, they created businesses, inventions, and philosophies that shaped our modern world, literally. And this emerged from the Enlightenment, the coming out of the Dark Ages. However, after World War II, society shifted. After the atomic bomb was detonated, women went from leading spiritualist movements. They went from being Rosie the Riveter to being sedated housewives. Men went from, cultivating a business or a trade where they took honor and pride in it, and they became cogs in an industrial machine. Why? Because as Rockefeller once said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. And in truth, the companies and the factories that were built were definitely efficient, and they did create a lot of products for a lot of people at a lesser price. But there's something of the soul that was lost during that time. And if we really used the higher faculties of our mind, we could have done both. We could have gotten better innovation, better efficiency, along with keeping the soul in the person and not breaking them mentally, emotionally, and then now today, finally, financially. We literally traded our consciousness for cash, but cash is not wealth, is it? It's not wealth. And of course, our children are paying the price for it today, and our system is cracking and falling down. It's not sustainable. And so society was definitely pushed away from developing the higher faculties of mind. That was not helpful in a factory environment. And also with reference to the electromagnetic energy field, which was also being developed at that time by Tesla and many other inventors, they couldn't really figure out how to put a meter on it. How are you going to put a meter on free energy? It's so much better to have many different types of plugins that cost money, building electrical wires and poles. I mean, you know, make massive amounts of money, and then it's constant repair and upkeep and infrastructure development. And so, you know, that doesn't occur when the energy is free. And this time was even a time of disclosure back then. This was really a time when if we could have shifted our mindset and our technologies and our abilities from the electromagnetic energy field away from vehicles and smog and fossil fuels, we would be in a very different place today, but that was definitely suppressed. So back then, because we were ready to shift into that new technology, the 1930s did represent an era of German innovation and all kinds of unique apparatuses. And they were definitely trying to mimic the spaceship of Maria Orsic, of which we discussed in the previous podcast. And it's also mentioned in my book. She did pilot this spaceship with her consciousness, just as it is being revealed today that Jake Barber is doing with his team. And he's doing it publicly. And not only that, he's doing it with venture capital money so he can get a return on investment along with the companies that are going to be investing in it. And of course, there's the legacy programs that have been doing this since the 1930s, but they've been doing it under wraps. Now, as disclosure looms, we stand at a precipice where humanity must either reclaim its higher faculties or be manipulated by the narrative presented to them as it has been done for thousands of years. But this time it's different. Mother Earth is at a point where she no longer will allow these behaviors on her planet. And so, with this in mind, where will these people go? If this type of behavior and this type of suppression and this type of human pressing of consciousness development continues to occur, then where will these people go? Where will these people go? And that's the question. And that's what's being battled for right now. Because there's the idea that because people are so confused when they pass to the spirit world and they really don't know what's going on, and you know, they come from a place on earth here where you're very hurt and broken as people. All we're looking for is something familiar and loving and caring. I mean, psychologists have done studies where they will put a monkey with a mechanical mom that has food, and they'll put in that same cage another mom that's very loving and cuddling and caring, but has no food. And the monkey will turn to the mother with no food, but gives love. So love is that important. And love has been suppressed from our experience on this planet, where we feel unappreciated, unaccepted. There's a lack of unconditional love. We feel judged. And so when people go to the spirit world, if somebody comes to them with a sense of love, right? That's all they're going to look for. But how are they going to know they're not going to be rebirthed onto another planet? And we all know that when we're birthed here, we lose all our memories from where we came from before being birthed. We generally do not remember our past lives. We generally don't even know other planets exist until they tell us that in school, and they control that narrative, what's true and what's not. So who's to say if they capture your heart here, the people that control the narrative, who's to say they're not going to capture your heart in the spirit world and then take you to another planet if this planet's not going to accept that anymore? I know that's way out there. Maybe for some of you, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, but that's what it is. So let's get back to the Jake Barber perspective on psionics. All right. So at the Psionics Summit, hosted by Ubiquity University on February 23rd, 2025, Jake Barber did make a brief appearance, and he talked a little bit about psionics. And he basically said it's tapping into the universal field of information, comparing it to the internet. He emphasized 4 key components: intuition, wisdom, intelligence, knowledge. And he stated that meditation allows Source to connect with us, but that setting an intention is key. Without intention, it's like a search engine sitting idle, waiting for input. And while he makes some valid points, this perspective is incomplete. In truth, the universal field is not something separate from us. It's not waiting for us. It's working with us and through us all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. And in all honesty, because we've been having all of this information suppressed for all of these years, we have been creating entirely unconsciously in our lives. And in all honesty, the universal field, it doesn't really exist without us, and we don't really exist without it. It's definitely a constant co-creation. But that's not what this discussion is really about. What this discussion is about is Jake Barber's emotional experience with the craft. Jake Barber described an overwhelming emotional response when he encountered the exotic craft. He said he was brought to tears, describing the sensation as a mother's love for a child. And since that moment, he says he has felt deeply connected to the craft, believes it's guiding his mission while also protecting him. And while many will see this as beautiful and actually a spiritual confirmation, there's those who have studied human psychology and metaphysics might see it as something else. And I want to kind of explain to you what happens in mediumship. So in mediumship, we intentionally set the stage for spirits to send us emotions, right? So if I were to be in a class and I would say, I'm interested in, or I'm working in a practice session, I'll say to spirit, I want to practice on certain skills. It might be clairvoyance, where I want to work on my visual. I want to have a vision of the person in the spirit world and the strong visual sensation. I might talk about having a strong claircognizance experience. That's where a download comes to me with full information that I have to tweeze out throughout a mediumship reading. And there's a couple others too. That's where there's the scent, where you can smell. The spirit world will send you a scent that you can recognize and share with your sitter. It can also give you a feeling. For example, let's say the person that passed to the spirit world had a heart attack. It will literally give you a little sensation in your chest, like a chest pain, quickly comes and goes, so that you can say, oh, I know that they had heart problems. And so they're very skilled, and your body is literally a vehicle by which for them to send these sensations. And one of the sensations that you can work on is called clairsentience. And clairsentience is a strong emotion. Sometimes it's a deep sense of regret, and you will feel the regret from the person in spirit. It's not your regret. It's them sharing that feeling with you so you can convey it to the sitter in front of you, the person who's receiving the reading. And one thing that's very, very common is for what they do, and I've called it this, I've had it experienced, and I call it love bombing. And that's where they just inundate you with deep sense of loving feelings. And these loving feelings send you a deep sense of love. And it overwhelms your whole body, and it does make you tear up. And it is a wonderful feeling, but it's something that they can do on purpose. Now, the love that the people from the spirit world send to me as a medium is not their love for me. It is a feeling that can be manufactured from their technological perspective. You got to understand that they are a technology and you are an amazing exotic technology. And so these things can be done without having a deeper meaning attached to it, other than I want to convey to the person you're reading for how deeply I love them, right? And they'll also send a download of information with it, why they loved him, why they loved this person, and some evidence with it. And so this is well documented phenomenon, and any medium that is worth their salt knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is not unusual. But also, along with that, and this is where I heard somebody say today, always be an optimistic skeptic. And so I'm also an optimistic skeptic when it comes to people who have near-death experiences, because they talk about the same thing that I talk about when I get love bombed from the spirit world. And Jake Barber got love bombed from the entity from this exotic technology. The near-death experiencers also talk about being love bombed. They say, I get there and I feel so loved and I feel accepted for who I am, and I feel like I'm home. And in my mind, I say, this is wonderful. And I'm not taking away from the experience of it at all. I just know through all the study that I've done over the years and years and years, there's many ancient texts and even recent channelings that talk about how, for example, when somebody passes to the spirit world in the Seth material by Jane Roberts, Seth talks about how when people pass to the spirit world, because we as a culture or as a people don't have a strong education on what happens when you pass, the people that pass to the spirit world are quite confused and discombobulated. So they have to take on certain forms, whether they're angels or possibly Moses or Jesus. They take on these forms and they will love bomb them so that they can get them oriented to the right place, which is the spirit world, right? And also the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks of what the stages people go through when they pass, and the different entities that can do the same thing. There's also, if you look at the Gnostic Gospels, I look at Pistis Sophia, she kind of talks about going through various stages, the 13 stages before she gets to her spot, and then also the Emerald Tablets. So I'm just saying that there is a big, big world going on out there. And for somebody to say that they had an encounter with an egg-shaped craft and they had this overwhelming sense of love feeling, I think that's wonderful. And maybe everything's on the up and up, but I'm saying your Jake Barber's body, like my body and your body, is a technology that can be utilized to create not only sensations of pain, or for downloads of information. It can also be love bombed. So love, it feels like the most intimate thing in the world and the most genuine thing in the world. And it is, but it's an emotion. And it's part of the see, hear, smell, taste, touch. See, hear, smell, taste, touch needs to be quantified with the deeper understanding of your higher faculties of your mind. And also you have to use a high level of reasoning. You have to understand the laws of your being. You have to understand the universe. And you can't come to the whole thing with your trauma. Because if you have just like 100% of people in the world come with a sense of, I don't feel good enough, and I have some stuff going on in my past. And so when I feel genuine love, it's gonna, I'm gonna gravitate towards it. It feels so good, right? So the question remains. Now, and I'm not picking on Jake Barber, but he is the face of disclosure. And is Jake Barber experiencing genuine guidance, or is he being emotionally manipulated into championing a controlled disclosure narrative? I'm not saying I know one way or the other. I'm not trying to convince you one way or another. I'm trying to say you develop yourself enough to make some decisions for yourself. Because here's what I know. How you live your life and what you believe here is how you die, and it's how you're rebirthed into the next life that you have. So be very careful what you're willing to consume for truth, because it has a huge impact. And the biggest impact is upon your passing, because it will determine your next birth. And I know you don't want to go through a challenging birth. Again, a challenging life wherever you go next. And let's talk a little bit about the pendulum swinging. We are at a tipping point where ignorance can no longer be sustained. Spiritual law tells you that. Spiritual law insists that there is a ebb and flow, and we are on the flow of a many year ebb. And higher beings do understand that the pendulum must swing toward truth. But that doesn't mean that the transition can't be manipulated. The current system is absolutely cracking, but a new one is already being built to replace it. They know what they're doing. And the new system will be different enough to feel revolutionary, yet similar enough to be controlled. When people are faced with chaos, they cling to the familiar. They clutch for it. They reach for it, even if it's not optimal. And Jake Barber, with his military hero status and emotional connection to disclosure, is the perfect vehicle for guiding the masses into the new system. But will it be true freedom or just another iteration of control? Here's the invitation. Just engage with your higher faculties. I invite you to step beyond surface level thinking, see the world from a greater perspective, recognize that true sovereignty lies not in what is revealed, but in how you perceive and engage with it. In my book, We the People of the Land That Used to Be, Telos Revealed, I share a story in the first chapter, a story of an oak tree outside of my kitchen window that dropped in a huge amount of acorns one year. It was just crazy. There were acorns for days. I was up to my hips in acorns in my backyard. And at the time, I guess I wondered what was going on. It was very odd, but I kind of just took it as random. Why? Because back in 2009 and 10, when this happened, I had not gone through my spiritually transformative experience. But years later, I realized what was happening. And in that year, In my area in Austin, Texas, we experienced one of the worst droughts ever, and tens and upon tens of thousands of trees, including oak trees, had died. But here, these oak trees had dropped all of these acorns to replace all the ones that had died. They were already preparing. The universe spoke to the trees, and the trees responded. And the universe is speaking to us too. But are we listening? So I'm going to end it with this. This is Next Level Human. Until next time, keep your mind sharp, your intuition clear, and your sovereignty intact.